CityCast Pittsburgh is supported today by the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Pittsburghers love this place, and I've actually never been, so it's definitely on my list to check out. There's history, there's artifacts like Michael Jackson's Thriller jacket, handwritten lyrics from the Beatles, Taylor Swift's piano, and right now they've also got a new exhibit on Saturday Night Live and their many talented musical guests. So you can see stuff from their skits and performances, and apparently it's the only place you can see SNL's entire performance archive. Check out the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame to learn more about the music that connects us all. For more information, go to rockhall.com/exhibitions/SNL-50-years-music.
Today on CityCast Pittsburgh. If you're tired of going to the same old bar and sipping the same old beer, maybe it's time to skip across state lines to try something new. I'm with two beer lovers who are sharing all the secrets to Cleveland and Ohio breweries. This is our third episode in a sponsored series all about what Cleveland has to offer Pittsburghers. It's Wednesday, July 30th. I'm Sophia Lowe, and here's what Pittsburgh's talking about. I'm with Adam Sorma, head marketing for Trace Brewing. Hello, welcome back to CityCast.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Sophia.
Absolutely. And I am also with CityCast Pittsburgh's very own sales executive, Owen Gabby. You also did a write-up of some of these Cleveland breweries for our website. Thank you for coming on to tell us more.
Hello, it's been too long. Thanks for having me again.
Yes, I'm really excited to talk breweries with both of you. I'm not personally a huge drinker, but I can always get down with a nice atmosphere, some good vibes. I am always happy to tag along when I'm invited. But let's start by kind of comparing the two brewery scenes. How does Pittsburgh differ from what's over in Cleveland? And are there like certain beers that you feel like are really unique to the Cleveland area?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think if you look at Pittsburgh, we are extremely lucky to have what we have here. So this is not to take anything away from Cleveland. I do think Pittsburgh's beer scene is a little bit better developed and more mature. But what Cleveland has in terms of similarity, you know, that city hugs water, like east side and west side along the lake. Our city hugs water with the rivers. And also I think that the kind of hardworking vibe and the history of like having a bit of a blue collar scene, that industrial past definitely comes through when you look at what Clevelanders reach for, which tend to fall in the lager, Dortmunder, malty, ale kind of like direction. And I'm happy to kind of dig more into that, but I definitely see, you know, a very wide presence of lager when I visit Cleveland.
Versus what do we have here in Pittsburgh?
Oh man, I mean, if you look at, if I open up the sales numbers at Trace, like every night, the top selling beer is still hazy IPA. Not a bad thing. I like IPA. It's fine. It just kind of, you know, what we saw with the emergence of this kind of craze around haze has stayed. And I'm sure you will see styles like that in Cleveland as well. But for us, it's IPA and lager are like 1 and 2.
Okay, so second, sort of our taste buds match Cleveland, but IPA still reigns supreme. Owen, what about you? When you go to Cleveland, are you looking for anything different in a beer than you would get at a bar in Pittsburgh?
Yeah, I think piggybacking off of what Adam said, I think that Pittsburgh probably got some of the hype explosion around craft beer in the past couple decades, maybe a little bit earlier and just a little bit with a deeper portfolio of places. And it's not just being biased living here. I think we just have such a deep proliferation of breweries, really in any neighborhood that you go in Pittsburgh and the surrounding areas.
Yeah,
whereas,
looking at those maps that the Brewers Guild puts out, there are just so many spots no matter what neighborhood you're in.
Yeah, and there's not not really a gap anywhere in the city. Like you can go to any corner and find at least one and probably 3 or 4 spots, and even as you go, outside of the city. And I think Cleveland hasn't had that much of a saturation throughout the city, but that again, it doesn't mean that it's a bad beer city. In fact, I think every time I go, I find a really fun spot and interesting place to be. And it's built kind of around that history of the city. I think there's a lot of buildings, a lot of tap rooms that are very proud to be old buildings that may have been converted from something else.
Very familiar here in Pittsburgh too.
Yep, it's a very, again, hey, this was a working class building. This is a manufacturing plant. This was something before it was a brewery. And I think some of the beer represents that. And again, I think, like Adam said, using its water is a lot of times the best feature. Like I think some of the specific breweries that we'll talk about, in Cleveland are ones that are built right along water. Use that as part of their taproom experience. Use it as part of what makes them great. And I think that's a cool thing that kind of Pittsburgh and Cleveland share.
So let's get into those recommendations then. Maybe before we get to the water, say you're exploring Cleveland for the first time, you're probably hanging out downtown. What breweries do you recommend in those big touristy areas?
Yeah, I think for me, at least, the one clear winner, and I put this in our article as well, for a place very much centrally located downtown is Noble Beast. It is, I think, a 10-minute walk from the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It is, super centrally located downtown. If you're doing the quote unquote tourist activities in Cleveland, you're probably going to be right around the corner from Noble Beast at some point. And I think, from an atmosphere perspective and just from a quality of the beer perspective, Noble Beast is right at the top of my list for me. I think they do every style really, really well. I think they do some of the, light lagery styles that we've talked about really well. Some of those kind of very clean, classic, traditional beer styles. Mm-hmm. And it's just a really fun place to go. The tap room feels very bright, inviting. Their food is really good. So that's
what are you
that's
eating
my
there?
So what have I had? Their pepperoni rolls are really good there, but they'll have salads. They'll have some more traditional pub fare. I think I've been there 2 or 3 times at this point. It's kind of become a staple if I'm downtown. So that's really a go-to for me in the downtown touristy spots of the city.
Well, let's talk about those nice scenes, views. Y'all were talking about the rivers. If you want to just sip your beer and relax and enjoy a great view, where are you going?
So, I guess that's got to be Collision Bend. And Owen kind of touched on this in his write-up. It literally is on the river, right, kind of hugging that bend that the Cuyahoga takes through Cleveland. I've been there once. Yeah, beer was good, but the outdoor patio was excellent. I mean, it's really unique. It's really, I think you think about like the 3 seasons of the year that you can kind of enjoy outside time, like besides winter, because it's so brutal here as it is there in Cleveland. I would also say like one other spot for like a good outdoor vibe and great beer, you would have to drive a little bit south of Cleveland to Cuyahoga Falls. But man, I would happily recommend Missing Mountain to anyone. Their whole staff is incredible. They have amazing beers. They're on the river. They have a 3-tiered outdoor patio, so you can kind of sit upper, middle, or lower, depending on how close you want to be to the water. That
sounds incredible.
It's a beautiful build out. Great food. There's some funny Pittsburgh ties, like Scott Mitchell, who used to brew at Dancing Gnome, works there, and their whole team is really close with the crew at Old Thunder in Blawnox. I remember when Old Thunder was opening, they were short on some aluminum for cans, and they were able to actually drive over to Ohio and borrow some from Missing Mountain.
Oh, that's really sweet. We've been talking all this week about how Cleveland and Pittsburgh should be friends, but it sounds like they're already friends. That's awesome.
Yeah, I think some of the how Pittsburgh and Cleveland should be friends, I think we can probably learn about it from the craft beer community. It's a very collaborative environment, I think, even across rival cities.
Awesome. Well, the flip side of maybe sitting and looking at the water, what breweries have fun activities? So anything from like lawn games to maybe things like live music, trivia. I know Trace does a lot of that. So I guess basically if I want the Trace experience in Cleveland, where should I go? Adam, I'll throw that one to you first.
When I think about the sort of the overall landscape and and see what's happening in Pittsburgh and in Cleveland. Like, the answer to your question might not be a brewery, to be totally honest with you. The answer to your question might be visiting a neighborhood like Tremont, which is super walkable on the inner west side. It's where I actually moved here from. I last lived in Cleveland before I moved to Pittsburgh. And you could bop to all these like lovely spots. I'm just thinking out loud about like the Tremont Tap House, Prosperity Social Club, and Hote's Cafe are all like within a short walk of one another. And you think about like, yeah, game nights, activities, theme nights, trivia nights, the things that you kind of have come to expect from like Trace. I'm not sure if that exists in Cleveland, and that could just be my own ignorance. I would say Happy Dog on Detroit Ave is fantastic to catch a show, get a beer and get a hot dog. I don't know. Owen, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Adam that I think Trace is pretty unique in some of the things that it does, even nationally, which is a testament to that team. But
it is a really great place.
Yeah, one other one I will add is Bookhouse Brewing is both a really cool spot and isn't necessarily the ambiance or activities in the same way that Trace is, but is a really cool kind of unique taproom experience. As its name implies, all of its shelves are essentially lined with books all across the entirety of the tap room, pretty much. There's a lot of board games. It's, a very cozy spot. It feels a lot different than a lot of other kind of big, spacious tap room experiences. It feels like you are kind of actually tucked into this little bookstore where you can, sit and have a beer and read and play a game or something like that. So it might
Cozy
be the opposite
Trace.
end of the spectrum, but it's I think kind of a unique ambiance among the city's breweries.
No, that's great. I love it. Anything that kind of like gets me out of the house where I can vibe, maybe with friends, maybe individually and still have a drink. I love that.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about Great Lakes Brewing Company a little bit. I know that this really kicked off the microbrewing trend, super big in Cleveland, made a ton of best of lists. Do you think it's worth the trip, or have like newer and shinier things kind of overshadowed Great Lakes?
Yeah. So 100% yes. Like basically, Great Lakes by volume is the 19th largest like craft brewery in the country.
Oh, wow. Didn't realize it was that big.
And they've definitely found ways to reinvent themselves and to, to best understand what it's going to take to survive like now, like pivoting away from all glass bottling into canning, into different formats of canning. I think that like, when you look at the growth of their one brand, it's like a Mexican lager. They started it as like a seasonal for the summer, and now it's done all year round. And I just know this because two of the Great Lakes brewers were visiting Pittsburgh just to like drink at some breweries and hang out. And because we have the coffee shop, we're open so early. And they bopped in, and I got to chat with them about just, their production, what they're up to. They're just bopping. Mm-hmm. They were sharing some stats around, just how much they have to produce to keep up. And it's incredible. I think that from a guest perspective, what draws you to Great Lakes is some of that aura of that old school, like original vibe, the authentic like brewery visit where you're seeing the equipment and you're seeing the sheer size of it, but also the food, the walkability. It's right in Ohio City, right off West 25th. You have a lot of things in like the pro column that make Great Lakes for sure a must visit if you're going to Cleveland.
Off of that, I think Great Lakes has been smart, like a lot of other kind of large scale, maybe more historical breweries, that they've taken advantage of some of what makes them so special and what made them, such kind of an early adopter of the craft beer scene. I know Great Lakes at this point offers tours of their facilities, so you can actually see all of these, massive brewing, facilities that they have on site there. They do not only tours of the facility, but they do, I forget what the exact name is, but they do essentially a history tour that's kind of a living archive of walking through the history of craft beer at Great Lakes and kind of just in the region. Mm-hmm. And some other places have kind of adopted this. It's not necessarily craft beer, but Iron City in Pittsburgh has done similar things to this. I'm from Rochester, and Genesee Beer, which is kind of the Rochester version of Iron City, has done a similar thing where some of these large scale breweries, I think they realize that, some of the smaller up and coming fine tap rooms have come in, but what they have in their favor is just, a lot of really cool history, a lot of really cool scale, that's a unique draw to them. And they've done a really good job kind of capitalizing on that.
Today's show is supported by Downtown Cleveland. Downtown Cleveland is your next great city escape. From the riverfront to the lakefront, you can discover a vibrant, walkable destination alive with energy and excitement. If you're looking for big city experiences mixed with a strong sense of community, Downtown Cleveland delivers. With more than 260 restaurants, bars, and cafes, plus 3 iconic stadiums, there's always something happening. And when the sun sets on Lake Erie, the city lights up with live music, dancing, craft cocktails, world-class entertainment, and more. You can visit the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, catch a show at Playhouse Square, it's the second largest theater district in the U.S., or head to the Flats East Bank for open-air patios and riverfront views. Whether you're into culture, food, sports, or nightlife, downtown Cleveland has it all, and it's just a short drive from Pittsburgh. Plan your adventure at downtowncleveland.com.
Today's episode is sponsored by Ohio Wines. Ohio Wines are an invitation from people passionate about creating unique wine happenings for all wine lovers, from the connoisseur to the casual sipper. It's an invitation to explore an unpretentious wine region, sewn together by meaningful connections with a focus on experiences. It's not about graduating from a tasting course at an award-winning winery. It's not always about the sunset view from the Ohio River Valley's vine-studded hills, or the sordid details of a Lake Erie wine cellar's existence during Prohibition. It's about discovering a hidden taste for Cabernet, or learning something new about your soulmate after 30 years. It's about hearing a century of passion in a master vintner's voice. It's about celebrating the romance, craftsmanship, delight, and curiosity found only in Ohio wines. It's about inspiring memories and forging deeper connections with yourself and loved ones in places held dear. It's about life grown here. Order your free Ohio wine guide to plan your visit at www.findohiowines.com. What breweries in Cleveland are good for sampling a ton of different types of beer? You are on vacation, you want to splurge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll drop a few. So I think that going back to Noble Beast, for sure, I know we talked about them earlier, that's a great spot to have multiple styles. I really like the way that some of their... they were doing like a more like malt forward lager, almost like a Schwarzbier or like an alt beer that pairs nicely with food. I would also say like Terrestrial is excellent. They do a bunch of different styles, and if you're trying to like get variety in, get some different things in, they've always just been a really good experience for me. And I would also say honestly, this is maybe going back to more like the vibe thing, but I would recommend Market Garden. I know Market Garden Brewery probably is, maybe feels a little bit touristy because it's right on the main drag in Ohio City. I went there a lot when I lived in Tremont. But the nice thing about Market Garden Brewery is like it's just so big. Plenty of seating, great food, like great hours. And it's also like a super short walk from Great Lakes. And so when you think about building that itinerary or building that weekend plan, I would for sure include, Terrestrial, Noble Beast, Market Garden, and then also Great Lakes is part of like a mini tour almost.
It's always nice when a tourist trap is actually worth the trip.
Yeah, it doesn't feel too corporatized or anything like that. Yeah, I second Terrestrial. It was one of the ones that I put on my list. But I think, Adam, you could attest to this. I think the question of what's a place with a ton of variety at this point, it's got to be most breweries. I think while Hayes still dominates, certain spots or what people think of when they go to a specific brewery, if you don't have variety, you're probably not going to do that great at this point. And that's not only styles of beer, but cocktails, NA options, whatever the case is. I think, most breweries at this point have kind of figured out that they can't stick to one lane unless they happen to do one lane just unbelievably well. So I think we're in a lucky period at this point where whether it's Pittsburgh or Cleveland, if you walk into most tap rooms, you're going to be able to find a lot of really cool options and not just, one or two styles like you may have 7, 8, 10 years ago.
Yeah, well, let's talk a little bit more about that then. If you're going to a brewery and maybe some people in your party don't drink, you have kids with you. I know we touched on some food, but are there any breweries that also have really good cocktails, non-alcoholic drinks, maybe some coffee, that kind of thing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I mean, a great spot for that would probably be Butcher and the Brewer, which is more of like a restaurant, but they just have a really wide range of styles available, NA stuff that, would basically touch any person in your crowd. It's definitely like, I think Owen earlier mentioned Bookhouse. I that's another spot that like really love for just the ambiance and like the books literally everywhere. I think that, when I think about the other stuff too, like getting outside of just beer, like I love Velvet Tango Room. It's like a cocktail spot. It's sort of in like Ohio City area on the inner west side of Cleveland. Definitely going to be more in the realm of cocktail. We're kind of getting away from beer, but I have to drop them a shout out because they were open back even when I lived there. And I remember it sort of being like super different. You kind of go through like a back room to like access
Speakeasy
it.
style type thing?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, like live piano, things like that. But yeah, Velvet Tango is pretty dope. But I feel like, Owen, do you have any other spots that you'd recommend?
Yeah, I mean, you nailed it with the food recommendations. That was Butcher and the Brewer is the one that I had on my list too. So that is, I think,
Butcher. Like, tell me more about the food. Like, you say Butcher, and I'm thinking barbecue. Am I right?
Yeah,
Am I wrong?
So I haven't actually been there in a few years at this point, so I'm probably not the best testament to like, hey, here's what you currently need to get. But I was looking before we did this at their current menu, and I think I saw among a lot of other things, octopus, pork shank, bone marrow.
Fancy.
Kimchi. So, and this is from a place that also had 12 or 13 beer items on their menu. So I think if you want a true kind of restaurant experience, somewhere where you can get a burger but you can also get octopus at a the tap room in Cleveland, I think that's kind of your go-to spot.
And we'll bring it back home to beer. If you are a beer snob and you want to chat with your bartender, really nerd out about your drink, what is your go-to spot?
That's a good question. I would say maybe, I hope I'm saying this right. Hansa, it's Hansa. They're kind of focusing on like traditional German styles, in Cleveland. It just harkens back to that like cultural kind of node where you want to, do right by your neighborhood and do right by the people who are going to support you. And that's why earlier when we were talking about, I see so much good lager like focused on the population of Cleveland. You have these like upticks with probably events and sports and concerts, and you want something approachable but that still has like flavor. And if you want to kind of nerd out and really like talk to someone about it, I would say Hansa. I would also say Noble Beast because we've said them a lot on this episode, but they're extremely knowledgeable. And able to kind of like walk you through the menu and find something that's the right fit for you. And if you want to, I don't know, take it in a different direction to also get super nerdy, but in the cocktail realm, it would have to be Cloakroom over in Tremont. I think I'm saying that right. Is that right, Owen? The Cloakroom?
Yes, I believe so. Yeah.
By Rezo only, very like, oh, I'm sorry, it's Cloak and Dagger. I'm sorry. But yeah, Cloak and Dagger would be a spot where if you want to really get into like mixology, it's a really cool setting. But yeah, you gotta make a rezo. You kind of have a time limit. It's gonna be a little bit pricey, but they definitely are trying to focus on that super elevated, curated experience at Cloak and Dagger.
Yeah, and then one other one I'd recommend from kind of a beer nerdy side. If we talked about Pittsburgh still, being really into kind of the haze side of things. There's a lot of variety in the Cleveland scene, but if you do want a place that does really, really good haze, a little bit outside of the city of Cleveland, kind of a funny name, but the Crooked Pecker Brewing Company, and it's out in Chagrin Falls, which is just a little bit outside of the city. I went there for drinks in between a reception and a ceremony for a wedding. And we kind of just wandered in because it was the closest spot to where we needed to be next. And we walked out being like, wow, this beer is really, really great. Again, it's very hazy IPA focused. They do have other things. So if you don't like that style, you're going to be able to walk in and get some other good beer. But the time I went in there, I was really, really impressed with the quality of the beer there.
Just to piggyback on that too, like I feel like I haven't mentioned this yet, but I do have a favorite brewery in the state of Ohio, and it's going to be a little bit south of Cleveland. But there is a brewery called Woolly Pig, and it's in like Coshocton, Ohio. So it's a solid. It's going to be a solid like hour and a half to 2 hours south of Cleveland. But they're focused on lager. They're on a pig farm. Just really, really like as far as like understated. They're not trying to like blow you away with like nerdy stats, but you go in there and you try their beer and their and the vibe, and you're on this like, you know, this pig farm, and they're a little
you have
tiny...
me at pig farm. I would go for the pigs.
It's amazing. Like the outdoor seating is all like tiny A-frame huts, and they work with a bunch of food vendors that are really good. They definitely understand their market. The only thing is you have to drive though. You really can't. You're not going to walk anywhere.
Yeah,
from
that
there.
makes sense.
Yeah, it's in the middle of Amish country. But yeah, Woolly Pig is in like Fresno, like Coshocton, Ohio. Highly recommend visiting, but especially if you're making the drive over from Pittsburgh. But yeah, you're definitely going to be in a pretty rural area.
So we've given everyone Crooked Pecker and Woolly Pig. So there you go.
There you have it. Some fun names, and it sounds like good beer. Adam, Owen, thank you both so much.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a pleasure.
And a reminder, you can read more about Owen's favorite breweries in Cleveland and check out some pictures on our website. That's pittsburgh.citycast.fm. That's all for today here on CityCast Pittsburgh. And if you're a regular listener tapping in with us daily, you can give us a little extra support and get great perks by becoming a CityCast Pittsburgh neighbor. You can join at membership.citycast.fm. It gets you ad-free listening, we do a lot of ticket giveaways, and you'll know you're supporting and informing our shared community for years to come. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Talk to you then.
It's probably worth mentioning like Larder in Hingetown on West 29th. Like they're just this incredible Jewish deli that like I think people like should know about. I mean, I feel like it's kind of like connected to a coffee shop called Rising Star, and they're inside of a firehouse. It's just a really cool place to visit, but it's like not beer.